So let's do a little bit of understanding of burnout, what is actually going on. So I noticed that especially in my research, I realized that about a lot of people actually struggling with burnout. Obviously including myself at that time. And then especially with what happened with COVID, what happened with all the things that is going on, it's actually have increased. So depending on the industry, depending on your age group, you will see that the prevalence of burnout is about 24 to 52. So different groups experience at a different level. So if you're in caregiving professions, if you're in client services, nursing, especially roles that you are generally dealing with people face to face, or you're dealing with challenging experiences of other people, this is pretty prevalent, right? So even if you're honestly, even if you're in toxic environment, toxic workplaces, this can cause you to have burnout. So that's one of the things. It has become pretty prevalent, and if you think you're the only one who's going through, it's not. It's a lot of people secretly. I've noticed that silently they're going through it without even actually doing anything about it. And it's still, now people are now starting to come and understand. But if you're actually coming to this session, I feel like you're taking the steps that is needed, and that is not everybody does that. And I would say about 10%, even maybe less, that still actually find a solution for it. But the ones who find, what I've noticed is the ones who actually come to this session and actually find a solution end up actually getting better. So that's a pattern that I've seen. So definition, it's a state of emotional, physical, mental exhaustion caused by prolonged stress, a constant stress, right? Usually it's related to work, caregiving, and overcommitment. Some cases you will see that it actually comes from other challenges that you probably have gone through in your life before. But when you're going through stressful situations, it tend to get triggered. So, and if it stays in your system long enough, this is usually what you will probably experience as burnout. So it might have other underlying issues, things like trauma that you've probably gone through, challenges you've gone through, and it can affect that. So that's one of the things that I talk about, because many people are not aware that their past does have an influence on burnout, but it doesn't mean that it cannot be resolved. It just, when you become aware of something, that becomes your first step for a solution. Because I realize it's really hard to solve something if you're not aware of it. And then the more you become aware of it, actually what I found is that that's about 50% of the healing, because awareness sometimes might hurt you, but awareness is also what heals you over the long term. So that's very important to understand. All right. So a lot usually causes of involves chronic workplace stress, things like overwhelm, overwork. For me, it was at that time I realized that I couldn't control the workload, right? So I didn't have specific mechanisms associated with that. So that's something that you will see that is caused a lot of people burnout. But we'll talk about some of the ways that you can handle that and what is that associated with. And also things like lack of rest, feeling undervalued, workload imbalance, like we talked about, and also lack of control. And the big one I've noticed that I didn't really know for a long time, it took me a long time to understand, is loss of meaning and purpose. The life seems like it's a bit purposeless or meaningless, and you tend to question why you keep doing these things without a meaning. So one of the things that I wanted to actually introduce the idea of how to actually find your purpose, because when you can find your purpose, or when you start taking the steps for it, it actually helps to deal with burnout. And again, you will see that it is scientifically proven way, and it's known as logotherapy, but it is a scientifically proven way to alleviate a lot of challenges in burnout, as well as things like anxiety and also depression as well. Okay. And in terms of remember this, so if you're having burnout, just know that you're not alone. A lot of people are going through this, and also know that it is it has become treatable condition, because I've seen a lot of therapy has improved over the years. I feel like when I was going through burnout about 7 years ago, I feel like there was not much help around. I felt very lonely, about me dealing with it. People just told me, when I was telling what I was going through, they just told me to go back to work, and I couldn't. It just I would just get irritated and angry, and then that's one of the biggest things I knew that something was wrong, because I don't want to be an angry person. I don't want to get upset with people. I love people, but I realized I couldn't control my emotions when I was going through it, and I knew there's something going on I need to work through, right? So that's one of the biggest things that was giving me the sign that I need to work on it. So if you're feeling alone, don't feel that way. There are a lot of people, and that's why I'm having these sessions for people to kind of get to understand and come together and see what we can do to deal with them better. Okay, so please feel free to ask me any questions in the meantime if you have. So some of the symptoms that you will notice with it, because again, like I said, understanding the symptoms actually it helps you to kind of put things into perspective, put things to get the help you need, and so forth. So one of the main things is that it causes emotional exhaustion, right? Feeling drained, feeling empty is actually one of the signs. And another one is something known as depersonalization. That means you feel detached from your reality. You feel like you're living in a movie, and then sometimes you feel cynical. You might actually, one of the things I see is that people tend to cry a lot because they don't feel like they have control over their lives, right? So they tend to be a little bit, they're not a little bit, but be cynical, and then they feel numb, right? So that's one of the things. So we'll talk about how connecting with your emotions is actually the solution for it, but how to do it in a way that is scientifically proven, that is actually helpful. We'll talk about that. And also, big one I saw even in myself, even though regardless of the accomplishments I was having, I just didn't feel like it was effective. I was being productive. I feel like I still needed to do more and more and more. And believe it or not, burnout can make you feel that way, even though when you're accomplishing things, when you are doing things right. So, if you're feeling this way, know that it is actually not your fault. That's why I called my book Burnout is Not Your Fault, because a lot of the things that you probably end up feeling about yourself is actually auto-generated or auto-created based on exposure or your protective mechanism. So we'll talk about that, what that really means as we're talking about specific tools. Right, so you also feel you might feel constant fatigue, headaches, even things like body aches. I see one of my friends who was actually younger than me. He has a lot of back pain, and then he's like bending over when he's walking. I was like, what's going on, right? So and then obviously he's also one of my corporate clients. So he's something that is bothering. So I see that a lot of people are having issues with their joints, issues with their body, because we'll talk about the nervous system is continually in the active mode, right? So it prevents time that is needed to heal it. So we'll talk about that more. So you also see there's a loss of motivation. A lot of people tell me, especially leaders, they don't have the same drive that they had before when they got started in their career, and that's a big one. And also joy as well. That's one of the things I noticed, that I didn't enjoy my life as much as I used to. Again, I thought it was just me getting older, and now I realize it's not. And you will see that I started to kind of realign my work to do things that I like to do, like these sessions and helping people with, going back to essentially studying psychology and giving people the knowledge they need to solve these things that they're having issues with. And also, you probably notice withdrawal from relationships and responsibilities as well. And then this is a big one. This is a one that I really didn't expect, but I had issues with. So, and then I see a lot of people are having issues with this one as well, which is essentially saying no, saying yes to things when you truly deep down means no. And we'll talk about how this is related to your prefrontal cortex and your decision making, because sometimes your emotions are running your decision making rather than your executive function, which is your prefrontal cortex, or right decision making. So we'll talk about how burnout influences that as well. And also the sense of hopelessness and meaninglessness is a big one that you probably notice as well, that is associated with that. So keep an eye on this one as well. So the thing about burnout, usually I make a comparison between usually depression anxiety versus burnout, because burnout have a tendency to be situational and external. It's usually to links to demand, right? Workload and demand and overloading your nervous system, things like that. But you'll see that, and on the other hand, but when you have prolonged versions of burnout, it can lead to triggering and causing trauma or triggering other events like associated with anxiety and depression. So that's something for you to keep an eye on, because they might be coming hand in hand if the burnout is prolonged, because that's exactly what happened to me, because I didn't know I was going through that. And then when by the time I got help, that I had developed depression, developed anxiety, and I didn't know it would do that. But then, obviously I found the solution for me that really helped me with these things. And that's one of the things I wanted to share in this, is what are the specific practices that was helpful for me, and what are the ones that are scientifically backed as well. Okay. So ask away if there's any questions in the meantime. So one of the main things I talk about, this is again something that I kind of had to develop to understand my own mind, to figure out what is actually going on, because I realized there is no specific model, even though some of these aspects are in the self-help stuff, self-help industry and psychology, but it's not really structured in a way that we can make sense of it. So I created a model of the mind that helped me understand my own mind, and now I've been presenting this to my clients and things like that, that have given them better control over their mind and of their life, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that. So you will see that the mind essentially can be divided, even though there's only, we work through one mind, it can be divided into three levels, right? So the first one is essentially the conscious mind, which is the one where making decisions, even when you decided to come to these sessions, right? Something, your conscious mind made that decision, right? But one of the things that you see that during burnout that suffers is your decision making and problem solving ability, right? So if you're in leadership type of roles, or if you're planning to go into that, having your conscious mind working with you, working properly, is very important, right? So this part of the mind, also your level of your awareness. So the more you become aware, more you become conscious, right? So the more works, when it works, the better it works. Essentially, the more you will be able to make decisions that are beneficial for you. But when it's not working with you, when your executive function is struggling, you will see that you're more affected by your emotions, and your habits, and from your past, your reactions more, right? So that's why the first thing I introduce to people is the conscious mind, because when you can develop your conscious mind, you become a lot more happier. You get better control over your mind. Getting better control over your mind means better control of your life. So you can manage and set boundaries if needed, and all these things, right? So even you coming into this session, learning these new things, it is, especially learning is actually a way to improve your conscious mind. And one of the best things to learn to improve your conscious mind is learn about the mind itself, how it functions, what happens, especially your behaviors. Start paying attention to them. Actually increases your conscious mind, because then when you become conscious, you can make the changes that is needed. Okay, but also it is the director, right? So you can use your conscious mind to direct certain behaviors and practices that is necessary for you to make your life better. So very important aspect of the mind that you want to first learn about and understand. Okay. And the other aspect is the subconscious mind, which is essentially responsible for your past belief, and then also things like automatic thinking. So if you're going through a lot of overthinking, the thinking that you cannot really stop, know that it's not really your fault. It's actually when we are exposed to certain experiences in our past, when we were children, through society, through authority figures, these beliefs, these types of thinking can take a hold within you, So this is very important to understand. And what happens is that because the subconscious mind is automatic in nature, it will start bringing this idea to your conscious mind even when you're doing something completely, yeah, different, right? So even when you're paying attention to this, you might be getting certain emotions that is coming from the past, what happened to you, right? Even when you're working, right? So what happens is that if you're getting overloaded with, especially the emotions from the past, the memories, and then reactive behaviors from the past, your conscious mind has to do a lot of work to keep these things under control, right? So that's one of the things to understand, is that a lot of these things that are coming to you, especially in terms of memories, in terms of emotion, it is coming from your subconscious mind. And know that we can reprogram our subconscious mind when we decide to. But there are specific ways. Again, we will talk about how to do them in our tools. But just know that it is something you can do by exposing yourself to these type of conversations, learning things, studying things, and then letting go of specific belief systems, specific ways of thinking. You can see that you can actually reprogram your subconscious mind. Again, not something I knew, and you will probably also don't see this model being introduced in normal clinical psychology or classical psychiatry. I'm not sure why they moved away from that, but it is actually a very valuable model to understand what is actually going on with your mind. Okay, so know a lot of your emotions are actually coming from the memories and things like that, coming from that. So we will talk about how to access that and then help you kind of make sense of it and let go of certain things that is not beneficial for you. Okay. And the other aspect of it that I never planned to essentially find with this aspect known as the superconscious mind. Again, we will not get into too much into this aspect. We will talk about. I mean, I usually have a lot of workshops in talking about this as well. I ran one recent one as well. I put the video on YouTube, and if anyone is interested, I'll share the link. But essentially, the idea is that it is where your infinite intelligence come from. So the intelligence that is associated within even your body, right? Like your heart, pumping of heart, heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, your recovery. So there is intelligence within your body that you are not consciously controlling. So that is coming from your superconscious mind, right? So understanding how the superconscious mind and how it works and aligning ourselves with that aspect can serve you a lot, especially when it comes to healing yourself and letting go of things that doesn't serve you, right? So even you will notice that when you the one of the signs that you're in working with that aspect of your mind is that when you're in peace, when you're joyful, when you're calm or happy, right? Because that's the natural state that shows you are aligned with your superconscious mind. So we'll talk about specific practices that you can do to align more and more so that the healing becomes a lot more natural. You will notice that even to be honest, we're talking about the superconscious mind is part of you starting to tap into it and tapping into the healing that it can offer you. Okay, so that's very important to understand. And the other aspect is it's unconditionally loving. Again, we'll talk a little bit about more what that is and what it is, but love and joy, peace, all these kind of goes hand in hand. And the more you can tap into these things, the more healing comes to you, right? So one of the reasons, why I brought this up is becoming compassionate towards yourself as you're going through this, right? Compassionate to yourself. Like when I used to go through burnout, I was very harsh with myself. And then I realized I used to get very irritated with myself. I would get irritated with other people. I would get angry with other people. I would get angry with myself for, simple like things like not meeting specific expectations, specific goals in life. And then I would blame and compare myself with other people. That would cause me more anxiety, more issues, more anger, more irritability. I didn't know it was doing that. I didn't know me comparing it myself with somebody else would give me anxiety, would give me burnout. I did not know that, but that's what it does. So one of the main things I would say is that deciding to becoming compassionate to yourself as you're going through this is a very important aspect, and especially when it comes to healing your mind and healing the relationship you have with your mind and yourself. Okay, so that's important to understand, and you will start to understand when we talk about the specific tools why or how all these things kind of come together. Okay, so one of the main things I would say is that understanding this something known as the T-bear model. I call it in, we'll go back a little bit. I think it might be useful. So it's tapping into one of the laws here, right? So it's actually part of the law of creation. Understanding how thoughts, specifically our thoughts, affects our beliefs, emotions, actions, and results are the most important, one of the most important things you can learn, because understanding how especially your thoughts can influence your beliefs and emotion, because these two are tend to be at the subconscious level, right, can really influence your actions and your reality. In reality, what I mean is you even having the being in the state of having burnout or challenges, right? But know that by changing your thinking, right, by changing your beliefs, again, this is not the only thing that needs change, but this is one aspect of it, because it involves the mind aspect of it. It can start making the changes that you need. So we'll talk about specific examples of what type of thinking leads to burnout versus what type of thinking leads to healing. So I'll give you a specific example, but no, especially in this slide, I want you to know it is possible to change how your mind is functioning by changing your thinking. Some of the thinking thought systems we have, belief systems we have, especially I realized that they were not serving me, and I didn't know that my beliefs had any influence on my emotions and my reality or my actions. I thought they didn't. I can think whatever I want. What I realized is that yes, you do have the free will to think anything you want, but I realized that based on how you think, it has specific results, right? So that's what really this model explains, is that by your consequences, you will know yourself, not as a way to punishment, but as a creative principle, like these type of thoughts. If you were to think this way, it kind of leads to these type of action, right? So even you determining what type of content for you pay attention to can influence your thinking, can influence your beliefs, can influence your emotions. You probably noticed that I used to, when I didn't know this stuff, I was watching a lot of news, and then they would lead to more anxiety. I would lead to more worry, and then I was like, man, why am I always worried and anxious? And I didn't know, because I was continually exposing myself to fearful thinking, fearful thoughts, and news. Right? I mean, it's. I'm not saying to avoid news altogether. I'm saying, sometimes when you overexpose yourself to these things, it can sometimes cause issues and challenges. Okay, so very important to kind of put that in your mind and understand, and we'll talk about what to do instead of watching news. What are the other things that you can do to educate yourself, and understand that you can, once you understand this model, you can start directing your thoughts more constructively, right? It's spending more time learning about things, spending time taking care of your body, exercising, doing your hobbies, especially joy. I'm telling you, it's one of the things that was so hidden. It was hidden from me for a long time, is that joy is one of the biggest antidotes for burnout, right? Doing things that you like to do. And I know many people, when I used to be a workaholic, I was a perfectionist, I was type A, all that. I thought, that's the best way to get ahead in my life and do what I need to accomplish in my life. But I realized it was not sustainable, right? So what really helped me kind of come back to myself, to live a happier life while I was working, was actually following my joy. And even you will see that even these sessions is actually one of the things that I really love doing, because honestly I do really want to help people. I love people. It's something that I've been wanted to do for a long time, but because I was so worried about getting ahead, I didn't really follow my joy, follow what I love, what I love to do. But the more I do things that I enjoy, the more I realize I have more energy, and then I have more purpose in life. So that's something that for you to keep in mind. And one of the main things that I would say, even if you're just starting, this journey, keep a journal with you, right? I think there's always a journey and journal. I didn't put that connection, but there are connections. There are things that you need to write down, bring it to your surface, bring it from your mind into paper, and that can help you a lot. And I would say one of the biggest things that helped me, one of the first things I started in my healing journey was journaling what I was learning, journaling my thoughts, specifically the emotions, what I was going through. I was saying I would write things like, I'm upset about this, and I would say, why am I upset? And then I would think, well, okay, what are the things I need to do? So I literally started to use the journal as a second brain. That really helped me understand and put things into perspective. So if you're just starting out, I would say keep a notebook with you, start journaling, start putting ideas. Again, it's not about journaling every day. That's something I tell. It's not really about journaling every day, making entries regularly. It's not for that. It's to essentially, instead of keeping things in your mind, especially if a certain recurring thoughts are coming, keep it in somewhere. So it just, some of those recurring thoughts, some of those emotions are trying to get your attention. They're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to get your attention. So if you give it some space for it to be seen, it usually goes away. I'm not saying that's the only thing we got to do, but that is actually a very valuable initial step. Instead of keeping all your challenges and problems in your mind, bring it into a place that you can see them and understand them. Okay, so that's one of the first tips I can give you, is that begin that. Even these sessions, some of the things that I talk about, see if you can keep a notebook with you. Again, don't try to write everything down. That's not really what it is for. Whatever that connects with you, something that helping you, start noting it down. Right? Again, don't do it as some another chore you have to do, because it's not really for that. It's actually, think of it like something that can help you alleviate some of the internal pressure that is going through. Okay, so that's very important to understand as well. So one of the main things, once you do start to see specific thought systems, specific ways of thinking, learning how to reframe your thoughts, it's very important. So if you're been exposed to therapy, you probably heard of something called cognitive behavior therapy, which essentially involves restructuring your thought thinking. And it is actually coming from the model that we talk about, because we talk about your thoughts have an influence on your beliefs, and then beliefs have an influence on your emotions, right? So especially emotional exhaustion that is associated with burnout tend to be associated with specific type of thoughts, right? And that is because in general population, about 10 to 20 daily thoughts tend to be unhelpful or negative, right? But the thing is, it depends from what you consider negative. But what I usually call is they're unhelpful, because they're not literally helping you have a positive mentality about yourself. We'll talk about what these examples of these are, but just to know that when you're starting to feel better, you will start reducing overall. If you were to look at daily thing, I think I read somewhere about that we go through about 17,000 to about 30,000 thought patterns a day. It could be higher or lower depending how fast your thinking is, right? But if you can reduce the amount of unhelpful or negative thoughts in your life, you will start to feel better. And that's what it's not actually based on my own. This is what the research say, right? And you will see that especially during burnout, and especially through anxiety and depression, usually unhelpful, when I'm talking about specifically symptoms of them, not clinically diagnosed, the unhelpful thinking temporarily can rise up to 50 to 70%. out of the total thought patterns a day, right? So your job is essentially, if you're going through that, is that start looking into ways to reduce the negative thinking on thought patterns into things that are more helpful. Again, I wish that it's something when I was going through this about, 10 years ago, I wish I knew about that, but I didn't know it at that time. But I realized it, one of the biggest changes that helped me was making a decision to actually change the way I think, and then let go of certain belief patterns, certain ways of thinking that is no longer serving me. And I didn't know, honestly, I didn't even know I can change my thinking like that. But the easiest way to change your thinking is learn about thinking. Start reading books that you enjoy, especially things like nonfiction. Honestly, self-help books help, because it usually, even if it's the same thing written by everybody, right? It helps because it starts repeating ideas that are positive, and then positive thinking actually is associated with positive emotions, which is the one of the major antidotes for it, right? For burnout. So that's important to know. And you will see that the nature of the subconscious mind is automatic, as we talked about, right? So you will see that when you're in burnout or anxiety or depression, because I kind of pair them, they kind of go together. You will notice that there's a lot of self-critical loops. We talk about the unconditional love aspect of it, but you will see that there's a lot of negative thinking towards your personal self that usually happens, or it usually get directed as blame to other people, either politicians, your boss, your colleagues. I realized when I was going through burnout, I was blaming my boss for things that he didn't even do wrong. And then I realized one of the previous role, I was bullied, and I didn't know at that time I was bullied. I thought everybody goes through it, but I realized that trauma was kicking in more and more. And I didn't know, why am I having these negative attitudes towards all the bosses now, right? So I really didn't know why I felt that way. But again, that's because it's sometimes when we go through certain challenges, especially, these things get stored in our subconscious, that needs to be reframed or restructured or reprogrammed. And we'll talk about how to do that specifically. Okay, so you'll see that again, like I said, self-critical loops, blaming is usually a common thing. Things like I should be doing more. Um, you know, Usually the catastrophic thinking usually crowds your balanced reasoning, which is because it overwhelms your conscious mind, right? When you go through stressful periods, it overwhelms your conscious mind, which becomes very, even when you have to go do work and take care of other people, that can be very exhausting when you're going through these negative emotions while you're trying to think clearly. And that's why people get tired. They get overwhelmed because they can't manage both negative thinking and positive thinking at the same time, because your mind is capable of engaging in momentum in one way. But the more you can start in more helpful ways, the more it will start the healing process. Okay, and you will notice that if you have severe burnout or severe anxiety, things like that, the unhelpful thinking can reach up to 80% of your conscious thinking, and especially under duress, under stress. So this is very important to understand, and it can make people feel trapped in their head. Again, fixable issue, but before we can fix it, we need to know what happened. But it is a fixable issue. Even if you have 90% negative thinking, you can still change it. You can still start reducing that amount. You even just coming into this session, you're actually reducing it. You're starting to think more clearly. You're starting to think, understand things. So truth and understanding and positive thinking all kind of goes and hand in hand. You'll see why that's the case. Okay, so know that even if you're having issues with negative thinking right now, there are ways to do that, and then we'll talk right about that in the next slide. So you'll see that some of the negative thinking associated with you'll see, especially with anxiety and burnout, because they kind of go in hand. Also, I would say depression as well. They kind of have a similar thought patterns if you were to start looking into them. Things like I have to push through no matter how I feel. This is actually highly relevant to burnout. But one of the healthier, I would say, if you're going to see if you can take a screenshot of this or remember this for later. Actually, I'll share with this slide deck with you on our meetup group. But just know there, more you practice healthier reframes, the better your mental condition becomes, the more it started to heal. Okay, so that's very important to understand. So a lot of people go through think things like I have to push through no matter what, but the idea is to essentially reframe it, saying that listening to your limits is actually strength and it's not a weakness. These are, you'll see the healthier reframes are actually more truth about yourself, because like I said, usually truth and reasoning and balanced thinking kind of goes out the door, right, when we're going through burnout. So, bringing healthier reframes to conscious mind can be very useful. Okay. So and then other things like if I stop everything, it will fall apart. Reminding you, things don't just depend on only you. It's okay to pause and let others step in, and it's okay to pause and get some rest so you can recover, right? And then this one was a big one. I personally went through. I thought I'm only valuable if I'm productive, and I realized it's like, no, my value doesn't come just strictly from my productivity. It comes from who I am as a person as well, right? So this is a big one, and many people, they only measure themselves or other people based on what they produce. But it's not necessarily the most helpful way to think about yourself or others. And also, other people's need come before me. I know a lot of people, if you're a parent, if you're taking for other people, which is a very innocent and a beautiful act. But what happens is that many people who engages in helping other people forget to take care of themselves and set the boundaries they need to take care. So remember that you are just as valuable as the people who are taking care of you. So putting attention to take care of yourself is very important. It's probably the most valuable thing you can do for others who you're taking care of, especially if you're a parent, especially if you're a caregiver for somebody. Even if you're not, if you're just going through and going to work and you have to take care of your business, it's the same thing. The better you can take care of, the better, more happier you will be, the better you will take care of the work you're doing. So very important one to understand. Okay. And also seeing rest as laziness, again, that's something I also for a long time thought when I was in the corporate world, is that rest was laziness. But I realized is how valuable rest is, and rest is part of the recovery, and it is part of the fuel you need for creativity and for your energy and for your performance, right? So very important to understand about that. And then I'm not doing enough no matter how much I give. This is a big one I've seen in a lot of people. No matter how much, especially our worlds have become increasingly complex with all the technology, all the processes, and all the things that we have to do, that made that very difficult sometimes to deal with some of the things we're going through, right? So, and especially if you have this belief system, I'm not doing enough, no matter what, how much I give, it can cause issues. So remind yourself, you are doing your best with what is available to you, and what is within your limits, within your capabilities, right? I'm pretty sure if you can do more, you would. But bringing it to the course that you are doing your best with what you got is one of the most important things you can do, and then reminding yourself, and that it is enough. I saw somebody else. Thank you for joining us, Natalie. Sorry, Natalia. Thank you for joining us. So that's essentially the idea. So, and also believing in things like I don't do if I don't do it, no one else will. That's a big one I see in a lot of people as well. And again, remember, sharing responsibility is very important, allowing everyone to go, and I don't have to carry it all. And I know, especially when, if you're working in leadership roles and things like that, right? It's easy for you to think, I got to do things my way, but learning and helping other people grow and kind of guiding them with things as well, very important things. And this is something I saw early in my life, in my family, when I was trying to do everything for them and didn't help. I got burned out and didn't want to do anything. And then it can sometimes, when you do overdo certain thing, it can cause resentment and it can cause regret. And then that's something you want to pay attention, because these are some of the things that affects burnout. Okay, so make sure that you remember that. And again, there's a few more. Again, I'll share the slide deck with you for anyone who want to take a look at it. But the idea is essentially, switching from yourself, right? Things from what if I fail, to, failure is part of learning. I can handle challenges as they come. So I see that many people, when they go through a lot of burning, they started to develop more negative mindset that they are failing and things like that. But I'm pretty sure in your life that you probably had a lot more successes. You have accomplished and solved a lot of problems in your life for other people than yourself. So reminding that aspect of yourself is very important, especially when you're going through that. And then, I can handle uncertainty. Again, and uncertainty is part of life. And probably in your past, you probably had a lot of uncertainty in your past before. So what makes you think you won't be able to do it again? That's one aspect, right? So must be in control all the time. Know that you can control everything. That's not what we need to know. We need to be able to control the things that we can control. Things like reframing our thoughts, we can control. What other people think of us, we cannot control, because that's their way of thinking, their way of doing it, right? So that's very important to understand. What do I actually have control over, right? You can control your thinking. You can control your nervous system once you learn how to do it, right? You can control your schedule best, to at least a certain degree, right? So understand and what can you control, and get better control over that. And something I realize is that the more we think we have to control everything, the more we lose control, because we just too much and we're trying to control things that is not in our control, right? So learning how to control what we can control, like our thinking over time, once you learn how to do it, becomes a very important thing to learn. And people will judge me if I make a mistake. Everybody make mistakes. People respect honesty and effort more than perfection. That's one of the things I remind my clients as when I'm doing counseling, is that reminding that they are doing their best, and if they could do more, they would. And then mistakes are just general part of life. And I realized when I was going through burnout, mistakes were magnified in my mind. I would only think about all the mistakes I have done, and then I would just completely forget about all the things that I've accomplished. So that's why I tell people, especially my clients, is that start building out your achievement list. What are things that, projects that you completed, people you helped, whether you completed courses or certifications. Again, this is important, not as a way to improve, buff up your ego or whatever, right? It's not really for that. It is actually to heal your mind, right? Again, it's part of the treatment, is that when you can see that you can accomplish things, that you're not incapable, you're believing that you're incapable is not helping, right? That's not a help, because obviously if you're coming to these sessions, you probably done things very complex, very difficult, and that's why you probably are going through burnout, right? So remind yourself of some of the things that you have accomplished in your life, right? And that will start switching your mind over gradually for you to get better control over yourself and of your life. And I can tell you, like we talked about, burnout is something that is resolvable and fixable. But again, it needs to start from how you think about things. Okay. And then relaxing, and then if I put my guard down, something will go wrong. This is something I noticed before for myself, that I realized I was very afraid to calm down. I feel like something is gonna attack me, and I didn't even know how it was like that. And then I realized it was because I came, at that time I came from Sri Lanka when I was 13 years old. We were exposed to a lot of civil war and bombings and things like that. And I realized it was in my nervous system. So in my body, in subconscious, if I relax, then I won't be able to act quickly and do whatever I need to get out of it or whatnot. Again, we'll talk about that story another time, but it was something that affected me for a long time. So if you've gone through little bit of troubled times in your life, it can affect your reaction. But allow yourself to relax and get massages that you need, whatever it may be, to get that rest you need. Okay. So I have a question from Sarah. So what strategies do you recommend for highly competitive and toxic environment? Also, how do you deprogram prior experiences like you mentioned earlier? Oh man, Sarah, this is a very important questions that you're asking. I wish I had we because literally these are two chapters in my book that I'm literally writing about. So I'll actually share with you two couple of PDFs for you on specifically this aspect, because this literally like I said, right, bullying boss is something I went through in my career that affected my life for a long time, and also dealing with toxic environment. So what I expected, like, there is an escalation procedure, right? There are certain things you can start to have a conversation with people who bringing in the toxic, and depending on obviously your role is, right. And then also having ways to escalate. So I literally writing, literally it was called How to Deal with Challenging People and How to Deal with Toxic Environment. That's literally two chapters I'm actually working and writing. So because I see that as a major issues, what I would say, it's really about taking a step-by-step escalator. So if you try something, right, start to have a conversation with specific people, right, having toxic environment. So toxic environment usually caused by things like gossiping, excessive complaining, criticism, right, and bringing talking about to these ideas, even with your managers or with your team, talking about how it's not helping, talking about how that affects your mood, affects your body, affected your social relations, your work relationship. It's something that needs to be done, because many workplaces actually don't know that gossiping, complaining, judging other people actually causes trouble to your body, trouble to your mind. Many people don't know. It's not because, to be honest, people are not toxic because they are bad people. People are toxic because they're trying to work with life, trying to deal with issues, and sometimes complaining and gossiping is a way to offload that pressure. But that is an ineffective ways to deal with it. But many people unfortunately don't know that. That they think, because it's been programmed into the work cultures for so long. People just don't have that's what they learn how to do in order to deal with them. And also there are other issues, like people have gone through issues in their past and trauma affecting, and them leading you to traumatizing other people. That's one of the things I personally went through with the bullying boss, is that I didn't know. I learned about him. Obviously he said that he's on antidepressant medication. He's on anti anxiety medication, and then he still bullies people around. So I was like, what's going on? So a lot of these people who have bullying behavior is that they are going through a tremendous amount, and they're very likely being bullied in their life. So it's I wish we'll talk more. I wish we can have a chat about this more personally. See if you can chat with me personally about it, specifically your scenario. We can talk about brainstorm a few ideas in your case. I'll send you my email quickly. For anyone who want to quickly book a call with me, so we can talk about, if anyone wants. Just give me a second. So I'm just sharing my email. So send me a quick email. We can maybe book a call and talk about it, right? So yeah, I heard that's the key. That's the crazy part. It literally, I talk about, I'm writing literally the chapter called How to Deal with Difficult People, because these people are very hurt. Otherwise, and then most of the time they don't really know they are hurt, but they just know what they need to do to kind of alleviate that hurt, and that involves sometimes projecting that or hurting other people without knowing, right? So that's something, a big one that I've noticed. Again, like that's what I say, is burnout is not just a surface issue. It can go into some of the things that like past trauma. So I'll honestly, if you or everybody who can come to my session, I'll literally give you my free PDF for the book by 28. So that's the one that it's called Burnout. It's Not Your Fault. You will see that in the Personal Development Academy. That's one of the events I'm running. So we'll talk about that. I'll give it I'll give the book to you for you to read, for you to learn more about it, right? Because it is, I see, it is a, again, not something I to be honest here, I used to hate the guy for a long time, for doing that, because I thought like, why did he do that? How come he treated me that way? I was thinking that. I was like, and then I realized like, man, he's gone through a lot of trouble. He's gone through a lot of issues. Maybe he's in, he wasn't fully open, but I know he told me that he was taking antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. So it's a prominent issue. Okay, so we'll talk more about that. And please come to my session. We'll chat more. So, and again, things like I shouldn't feel anxious, something is wrong with me. Again, a lot of people think, when they're going through these type of things like burnout, and it's like there's something wrong with them. I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with you. This is something I wish somebody told me early in my life, early in my career. Burnout doesn't mean you're broken. Burnout usually means that you're innocent and you've been working too hard without resources, without giving yourself a right break and right knowledge that you temporarily need for you to feel better. Okay, so don't ever think there's anything wrong with it. This is not the case. I've worked with so many leaders, so many people. No, I feel like when people are healing, they become even better than before, because they have now the experience what they have gone through and what they have seen, and they usually end up doing a lot better in their life and than before. Okay, so that's important to understand. So Sarah, I saw your hand, or maybe you were trying to give me a thumbs up, but either way. So yeah, either way, feel free to tell me anything you have. Just raise your head and we can chat. But there's one of the main thing I want you to remember is that there's nothing wrong with you. Usually it's to do with the resource management issue. As I don't know if anyone from Raptors follow Raptors. It's a load management issue. Okay, so we need to manage the load that you're going through. Okay, so that's one of the few things that I want to talk about, especially to do with reframing your thinking. I know we are kind of quickly running out of time, but if I might go a little bit extended if you're able to stay a little bit longer. But let's keep going, because I think some of the things that might be very, very helpful for you. So some of the few things that you see that I've seen causes of them. Again, I'm not telling you to go, especially things like criticism. It's not really about, oh, I got to stop criticizing myself today. It's not really about that. It's making a decision to let go of criticism, all these things gradually. Because some of those things that you see here are not really helping you put you in the best states of mind, right? So it's not really, again, doing everything I'm telling you to do today and then, hoping to feel better. It's not really. It's about, making the steps. Think of it like these are just still awareness stage, right? Remember, like, first the ideas, the thoughts, the beliefs will come later. But the first is getting accustomed to what I'm talking about, right? Repetition is key to learn about the mind and to make the changes. So understand, like, plan to, decide to let go of criticism, not helpful. You might think it's helping you stay accountable. It actually does more damage. I've seen when people do excessive criticism, it leads to things like guilt and regret and resentment. And that's not really good for you, not good states that will help you, right? And also things like anger. I know anger is a very interesting emotion, because anger is actually telling you there's something that was mistreated or injustice that happened. So what I mean by letting go of anger is not just saying you're dismissing it, right? It's not really about that. It's actually writing or expressing in a way that is you can deal with it better. Okay, so that's very important to understand. It's not really about, oh, I'm going to stop being angry. It's like, no, actually write about what are you angry about? What do you feel guilty about? What do you feel regretful of? What are you criticizing yourself about? Use your journal, bringing it to the table, bringing it into understand, and ask why. Why do I feel this way? If you don't know, that's okay, but ask yourself why that's the case, right? That's what I mean by letting go. Letting go not mean suppression. That means burying it. It's also don't mean repression. That means keeping things buried. That's not what it is. It's expressing it, bringing it to the table, and then say like, you know what? Not useful for me. I'm going to let go of this. That's the difference. Okay, so that's very important to understand. And also things like grievances, what I mean, like your it's very similar to actually blame and regret or resentful, being resentful. So they're kind of in the same link. You have a certain issues with people for over long periods of time that you're holding on. Again, this is like I said, when I was bullied, I held that about that guy for a long time. I didn't know it was causing me issues, to be honest. I thought it was like, oh, what's wrong with holding on to blame, holding on to grievances? It's not doing anything, right? It was giving me burnout. It was giving me depression. It was giving me anxiety. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was causing from that. But it can. So if you even look at if like we talk about, right? Just do a quick search on ChatGPT on the effects of grievances, effects of regret, right? So once you learn the effects, what I want to let go of this thing. It's not helping me. That helped. Learning to let go. It's not, again, I tell you, learning how to let go. It's not a one-day process. I wish it was, but it's not. It takes repetition. Some of these things have been well embedded into our subconscious mind. So we definitely need to practice it repeatedly in order for it to fully be let go. Okay, so that's very important to understand. And another interesting one that was actually affecting me, I didn't know, was having excessive expectations of life. Right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't set goals. You should definitely set goals, but that excessive need for it to happen, it can cause sometimes issues. See, like I still, I'm in school right now. I have specific expectations, specific goals that I wanna hit, but I'm not as hardcore. Okay, if it doesn't come through, that's fine, right? But I do have expectations. Doesn't mean that that I do it, like I don't go in the whatever it takes mode anymore. I used to, but I don't do that anymore. It was very painful. So I still have good goals, things that I want, ideal life that I have mapped out for myself. If you're not doing it, I would highly recommend you do that, because they will actually put you in a good mood. Is write down how your ideal life looks like. What work would you be doing, where you'll be going to visit, for your vacations, or who do you want to spend time with, whether you want to start a business, whatever it may be. Start writing them down. Don't keep it in your head. Write them down. Writing actually have a huge effect on your goals. So again, that's a conversation for another time. But don't be too cornered by them, right? Don't be too stuck by them. Don't have excessive expectation. What, I won't be happy if it doesn't come true. Don't go into that. That's not helpful. Be happy with what you can do and what you have accomplished, but still set goals. But don't be too unhappy if they are not coming to fruition right away. Because if you have a specific goal, I'll tell you, I know we're going into different type of material right now, but if you have an idea to do something in life, probably very likely will come to true if you start writing it and then let go of that excessive expectation associated with it. Again, it's we get into metaphysical of things, but I know I would like to talk about it, but I don't think this is the appropriate session for it. But the idea essentially is write your goals down, but don't have excessive intent or expectation, because that can cause unnecessary anxiety and burnout if you're not watchful. Okay, so essentially that's the idea. So then the other aspect, right? So what we talk about the mind, I think we talk about the mind well enough for now. Sorry, I'm going a little bit fast. So now let's talk about emotions, because emotional suppression, emotional repression, essentially what that means, you're dismissing your emotion, can cause emotional exhaustion, can cause a burnout, because you're trying to suppress one of the key inner messengers. Remember, your emotions are your inner messengers. It's your, what I call, the language of your soul, right? So if you continually dismissing your emotions, you will start feeling numb. You feel like you're not yourself. That's one of the reasons I know sometimes, when I was, I talk, I didn't really honestly like, hold like this thing, men don't express their emotion, all that. I did that for a long time. And then there was a period that all I was doing was crying. So men do express their emotions, but they just wait till it's the last point sometimes, right? They, because for me, I realized I couldn't control my emotions, right? Like I would go to the bathroom and cry when I was in burnout, and I couldn't control it. I was like, why am I going through this? I'm literally a leader of a company and I'm going through this. What's happening to me? But I realized my emotions were my messengers, and I was essentially shutting down my messengers. And then they started to all pile up together and then try to come out of it as your tears and crying and panic and emotional breakdowns. So what I've noticed, even again, this is known as something known as emotional focused therapy, is bringing your emotions to the surface, right? Like use your journal, right? Rather than trying to let the floodgates out, started to let it out a little bit at a time, right? The way to do that is try to identify what emotions are you going through. Do this every day if you can. This is one of the things, like, how do I feel today? Do you feel sad, angry, scared, or anxious? Do you feel strong? Do you feel happy? Do you feel calm? Right? Ask yourself, like, write it down. You know what? Today I feel this. And then ask yourself, can I be compassionate the way I'm expressing? Because I know many people, this is included for men and women, that some people don't like expressing their emotions. They're not very comfortable with anger. We're not comfortable with sadness and fear. So they just avoid it. They just do other things, right? They distract themselves. But again, remember, your emotions are the language of your inner self. The more you keep them suppressed, the more it becomes difficult. It kind of piles up together and then comes in different ways that you don't anticipate and expect. So start to let them out slowly. Use your journal. Say, I'm upset about this. I'm sad about this. I regret doing this. I'm not saying to kind of stop thinking that. I'm saying write them down so you can see it. That is proper emotional expression. That's how you get mastery over your emotions rather than you being controlled by your emotions. Okay? So start writing down what are you upset by. Every day do this. I feel sad because this, right? And then can you be compassionate? Right? Can you say, like, can I be compassionate towards myself even though I'm sad, even though I'm angry? Right? Anger usually means that something's been pressed or you've been something unjust happened in your life, and that deserving you of compassion, right? So that's important. The same with all emotions, right? Happy, right? Whatever may be, start looking at. So use this emotional wheel. Again, like I said, I'll give you the slide deck, but it's not about getting all the emotions, on the dot correct. It's about making an approximation. You'll notice that you just trying to identify your emotions, you're activating your prefrontal cortex, you're activating your executive part of the brain that helps you make better decisions, stay better control over your emotions. So this is actually how you will develop what is known as emotional regulation, right? So you're learning to regulate emotions rather than suppress or repress or dismiss or whatever may be. Okay. So again, I noticed that even the workplaces, people who are emotional are not seeing the best light. So people continue to keep their emotions to themselves, not letting them be part of the decision making that is needed, right? So that's very important one to understand. But you don't need to go talk about your emotion with your boss. I'm just saying is that know your own emotions, what they are telling you when something is not right, something that you feel like you need to have more space for you to deal with, right? So ask yourself, what happened in your past, right, in order for you to feel that way, feel the way you are having this emotion, right? And then you ask yourself, what is your need behind? What do you think you need in order to resolve it? Do you need some help from somebody? Do you need to talk to somebody? Do you need to correct some behavior that you're doing wrong? Because I know that's what guilt sometimes is, that I used to feel guilty, not knowing why I feel guilty. I would just kind of avoid it, and then I realized it would just keep piling up. I realized I needed to correct certain behaviors. Not something wrong with you. It's not, you deserve nothing but compassion. But then I realized it was a message. It was messaging, but I wasn't accepting the message. I was saying, no, not right now, right? So that was my fault. But same thing, I see a lot of people not really, when they don't pay attention to emotion, they go through that. Okay. And so when you started to create this, I don't know if I use the right word here, create this perspective about emotions, rather than distance. I guess it is distance when you're writing them down, but it's really about getting the insights associated with the emotion rather than judging your emotions, right? So express your emotions. If you even today's Sunday and hopefully you don't have work, see if you can start journaling today a little bit about what you're feeling, because that might help you. Okay, so that's what it is about for this slide. So please feel free to ask any questions about very important two aspects, especially with the mind and the emotions. Very two important aspect to kind of start regulating things in the better way. Okay. So some of the couple of practices that have been helpful. Again, mindfulness meditation is something I really did in the beginning a lot. Again, I even to learn how to do this, I even went to Sri Lanka to live with monks. So I got a pretty good deep understanding, and then I realized it's actually a lot more simple than a lot of people think, and it doesn't need to be extra complicated. You journaling about your thoughts, you journaling about your emotions, are you're meditating, because you're meditating means you're thinking. You're technically, the word meditation even coming from the word bhavana, which is actually to develop. So more you develop your understanding about your emotions, about your thinking, you're technically meditating, right? So the key thing is being non-judgmental, right? That's one of the main things. So becoming mindful of your thoughts, your emotions, your behavior, that is itself is meditation. It doesn't need to be any complicated than that. I know the Western culture, Western world have overcomplicated the meditations, and it happens. It's people's careers depends on this stuff now, right? So, but it's a lot more simple than you think. Just start paying attention to your thoughts. Whether you keep your eyes closed and doing it or you're journaling it, it works the same way. What it does is that it starts breaking the cycles of worry and overthinking, and teaches you to notice, especially stress signals and also emotional signals, like we talked about, before they started to overwhelm you. Like I said, it's when you started to keep your emotions in suppressed, and your thinking suppressed, right? Or negative thinking, allowing too much negative thinking, that can give you a difficult time. And also this another meditation that really helped me in my life was something known as the loving kindness meditation. Again, do a little bit of research on, there's a lot of videos on YouTube as well on how to do loving kindness meditation, but this is a now scientifically proven. It's getting more and more science backing. I actually did a couple of papers on this on my master's. It is actually one of the most effective ways to actually heal your mind. So essentially, the idea is that you repeat certain phrases, right? Like, may I be calm, may I be safe, and may I be peaceful, right? So you repeat these things over and over again. So what it does is that we started to reprogram your subconscious mind more and more for you to be in this emotional state. And you might think, like, I'm not feeling any of them, so why would I say it? The feeling will come over time. That's the thing. So these affirmations, they are technically like affirmations, but the feeling associated with them come over time. So you don't need to, even if you don't feel it right away, stop practicing. See if it's working for you. Because I realize my tools. I say, what? Start with the what that resonates with the most. Ooh, I want to go check it out. Go listen to that. You don't need to do everything what I'm telling you. That's not really the purpose of it. Go after the sessions where we talk about what are the ones that brings you joy, what are the things that is most relevant for you. So Sarah had issue specifically about dealing with competitive and toxic environment. So yeah, it would be ideal for her to look into the specific ways that helps her deal with her specific issue, because that might be the ones that are causing her burnout, right? So knowing that what actually help you, and then finding solution that is relevant for you, might be the most useful. You don't definitely have to do everything what I'm telling you. Just work with the ones that are calling your mind. So you will see that when you do a little bit of research on loving kindness meditation, you will start reducing your self-criticism, which we talked about, and also emotional exhaustion over time. But it's extremely, extremely effective system that is being researched, that can really help with your mind, especially. Okay, so very important to understand. Okay, so I know we are running out of time quickly, but we'll go through them. We might extend it for another couple of for 15 minutes if you have time. So other aspect is, healing your nervous system, right? Which is, we now finished the mind and the emotions, and now it's about healing the nervous system. So healing the nervous system really healing the body really comes down to healing your nervous system. And I'm not sure, how many people are aware of, there is, I mean, the nervous system have multiple functions, but there's two specific aspects that I want to talk about, which is the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So you will notice that when you're in burnout, your sympathetic nervous system stays overactivated. Essentially, it is your survival mode. So it's the flight or fight. I mean, there's four components to it: flight, fight, fawning, and freeze. But this aspect stays always active when you're in burnout. And then it has increased heart rate, blood pressure, and then thing is that the idea is that you don't need to keep that system always activated. It should only need to be activated maybe 5%, 10% of the time when you're going through a stressful situation, so that it can start mobilizing the resources and the energy and the glucose or whatever that is needed for you to deal with the issue. But the problem is, when people are continually stressed out, continually nervous, continually in anxiety mode, this system stays overactivated. So it's always hitting the gas pedal. It's like always holding on to the gas pedal without using the brake. You're going. Imagine you do that for a few years, right? It will break down the car. It will break down, start, having an effect on your body. Doesn't mean that it's not recoverable, right? Your body has infinite intelligence, right? Because of the superconscious mind, that you can heal it when you give the right attention. What is the right attention? What I mean is that initiating the parasympathetic nervous system. So I'll give you specific ways to how to initiate that. But the idea is essentially initiate your parasympathetic nervous system, which start calming down and recovering your system, which is actually the calming down and recovery system. And then what it does is it's primarily responsible for healing and then repair. So the more you started to relax, more you started to calm down, the more it will start healing, right? So things like meditation, like even journaling, yoga, breath work, deep sleep, and also things like a light intensity, low intensity workout or exercises, dance, they might really can be helpful to initiate your parasympathetic system. So do a little bit of research on your time, how nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system is affecting your burnout, and what you need to do to initiate the parasympathetic nervous system in order for you to feel better. Okay, so that's essentially the idea. So some of the practices that can be highly effective, there's something known as the 4-7-8 breathing technique. Again, this one is actually very effective to immediately put you in a more relaxed state. Essentially, the idea is that you inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8 seconds. I mean, again, you don't need to get the what do you call it, the seconds right on the dot, but the idea is essentially to inhale and then slowly hold it for a bit and then slowly let it out, right? You don't need to be, again, like I said, 100% accurate with the number of seconds. The idea is that you have the practice when you do that, and you realize that these type of breathing techniques are heavily used by even things like soldiers and Navy SEALs, because they go through a lot of stressful times, stressful period, and their bodies keep in that state. But in order to relax, what they do is that use these breathing techniques to help them calm down. Okay. And also things like cold exposure, cold splashes, cold showers can be really helpful to cool your system down, right? Because like I said, when you're continuously in an active mode, when your sympathetic system stays activated all the time, it's not resting, right? But when you started to exposure to cold, it might initiate a little bit in the beginning, but then when you start to cool, warm up again, you will start to put yourself in a parasympathetic system. And also things like sauna. can really help you as well. So if you have access to a gym or if you have access to a sauna, it can also help you calm down as well, right? So you going back and forth between cold therapy and sauna in the same time is actually known as contrast therapy. It can be really helpful actually to reset your nervous system. Do a little bit of research when you get a chance with that. And things like Om meditation. There's a lot of you'll see there's mantra meditations available on YouTube, and chanting and humming and things like that can be very helpful. What it does is that these vibrations that is by these chanting or meditate or meditation, it can stimulate what is known as the vagus nerve, which is actually initiates your parasympathetic nervous system. So it actually is one of the things why it's so helpful is that even when you're listening to them, it can be helpful, right? Because that vibration can actually start initiating a nerve, specifically the vagus nerve, that is responsible for initiating the parasympathetic system. So that can be quite helpful in order to calm down when you're resting, right? I would say, listen to something, good music or something, a chant or meditation while, before you go to take a nap or before you go to sleep, because it can put you in that state a lot more quickly, a lot more faster. Okay. So that's essentially the idea. And also low intensity exercises can be useful. Aerobic, dance, yoga can be quite useful. And then also things like deep sleeps and naps can be quite useful as well, right? So if you, don't stop yourself taking a nap if you need to. But you'll see that if you, like me, don't sleep for 3 hours, right? So sometimes that's what I do. Naps are so good, then I end up sleeping 3 hours and it messes up my whole nights. So, try not to do that. See if you can keep it to about 30 minutes. But, in the weekend, obviously you can do that. But especially when you're recovering from burnout, allow yourself to do sleep well. Okay? That's very important to know. Right. So again, this is actually talk about the exercises, because one of the most valuable ways that you can treat burnout is exercise, which is essentially because it can produce endorphins and reduce the stress hormone, especially things like cortisol, and then again it can help you get better sleep. And I recommend usually something low intensity, because high intensity workout can increase your cortisol level in them temporarily, or near something known as adrenaline, right? So these things can keep you in a stressful state unnecessarily when you're trying to heal your body, right? So, and then one of the main things, this is key advice I can give, is that start with exercises that you do actually enjoy. Again, doing exercises that you enjoy is the secret for consistency. So if you start doing things you don't enjoy because you do them because you have to, you're probably not doing it consistent enough. So start with making a list of exercises that you do actually enjoy, and start with the ones that that is available to you most immediately, and then begin that way, and then use joy as a compass, right? So that's very important to understand. Like I said, avoid weight training in the beginning because it can increase cortisol, and also try to keep your heart rate. If you are tracking yourself and having one of these watches or anything like that, keep it under 120, because beyond this point, usually it can be 130 for some, but if it goes beyond 120, it can start getting into what is known as the high intensity workouts. So try to do about 20 to 40 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week to get started. Again, this is, I know, this is not necessarily for weight loss or, toning or whatnot, right? It's actually as a treatment for your burnout, because it is actually shown that burnout can be resolved through, especially the nervous system issues, can be resolved through exercise. Okay, so that's very important to understand. And then the idea again is to calm down your nervous system, initiate your specifically parasympathetic system, right? And then any workouts that increases cortisol, adrenaline, it can keep activating your sympathetic system, and that's not really what you want. So don't go too hard or too long. Don't do if you don't need to over hour or two workouts, that's not necessary. Again, if you want to look at it as a treatment, This is essentially what's ideal. Okay, so that's essentially for that. So we'll talk a little bit about what is known as connecting with your soul. Again, this is something, an aspect that I avoided for a long time. I didn't know my soul had anything to do with my burnout, and then obviously it does, right? And I didn't know that. And once I started to actually explore these aspects, it became even more clear. So again, I'm not. You will see that even just you having some sort of a spiritual practice, whether it's you reading books, whether going to church, temple, whatever may be, go with the ones that you're most connected with. I'm not here to tell you to take up any specific religions or anything like that, but go align with yourself what is calling you freely, whether it's you reading books. For me, it was exploring all religions. My really original religion was Buddhism, so I was doing a lot of meditations and learning about Buddhism. But now I'm actually in a seminary studying Christianity, because certain things in Christianity is very exciting me to learn about right now. So I'm studying that, but I'm also combining with science. I'm trying to integrate essentially science and spirituality. But I can't call myself religious at all, because honestly I'm not. But am I spiritual? Highly, because I believe that spirituality actually can have a huge beneficial effect on your well-being, and it is actually the third component, or one of the primary components. You will see that from this little diagram I created. You have your soul, and then you have your mind, right? We talked about before, and then as an extension of your mind, you have your body, right? But understanding the nature of your soul is very key, right? But remember, we talked about your emotions, right? Your emotions are the language of your soul. So it's how you actually connect to from your conscious to your soul. So pay attention to your emotion, what it's trying to tell you, especially emotions such as joy, happiness, calmness, excitement. They're coming from your soul. While things like anger, sadness, anger, sadness, fear, they are coming from some sort of a repression or wrong set of ideas or unhelpful set of ideas. But especially when you can start paying attention to ideas that inspire you, even the word inspire coming from the in plus the spire or the spirit, right? So learning to connect with that aspect can have a huge impact in your life, right? So again, I'm not telling you to become spiritual in day one. It's about, for me, like I said, learning, exploration, and go to the thing that calls you when you're feeling happy and joyful, right? Again, these are not protocols, these are explorative techniques. And if you're connected with God, ask God for help, ask your higher self for help, because it can really help. Because you will see that more you study about this stuff, when you start to ask higher self for help, it activate part of your brain that is that involves with your prefrontal cortex, or getting the help you need, or improving your decision making, right? So this is actually very important one to understand how to do, right? So I see a question from Sarah. So I don't want to interrupt. That's fine. But I would be interested in hearing more next time about effective prayer. Oh, absolutely. I can imagine a situation of focus in the prayer may cause. I can imagine a situation too much focus on anxiety in the prayer might cause more anxiety. Yes, I definitely understand that. So we will definitely. There is actually what I kind of outline it in, because one of the chapters is actually called Exploring Spirituality in the book. It talks about something known as the scientific prayer. But usually what really was helping me was essentially kind of writing down, God, please help me with this, and I would just kind of let it go from my mind. I know it's not an easy thing to do in the beginning when you're not used to letting go anxieties or issues from your mind, but something that you can test out, at least for now, Sarah, is that write down what you worries about, and then I say, please, God, help me with this, or please, higher self, or Buddha, or Jesus, whatever that you connect with, asking specifically, but write it down, then say, like, please help me with this, and then kind of go about your business. And do believe, have faith, at least, what if it actually worked? Because that's one of the things, like, I was not the person who believed in God before, believed in any religion. I honestly dismissed it completely. But it came, it's kind of a story. It came to a point that I didn't have a way to solve my issues. So it's like, if there's a God or whatever, please find a way to kind of guide me and help me, because I don't know what to do. And and then I got certain messages and I wrote them down and I started to do them, and I end up doing things what I'm doing now. So I would say start with writing down what you're worried about, and then literally let it go. Right? What if actually there is some help? What if there is some guidance coming from that? Right? So we'll talk more about that if you like. If you want to book a session with me or book a call with me, or come to one of my next sessions, we can get into deeper. But I'll also share my book with you as soon as it becomes ready, so you can get a little bit more understanding on it. So I'll talk about how to what is known as a scientific prayer, how to pray in a way that is aligned with neuroscience, neurology, that is aligned in a way that I've experimented. What is the right way? There's no technically right way to pray, but I will explain. I'll share with you what helped me, because I feel like prayer worked for me personally. Not in the beginning. In the beginning, I don't know what I was doing. I didn't think anyone was helping me. But now I'm at a point like I cannot deny the help I got, and even you will see some of this knowledge I got from prayer, because I needed help and I needed to find a way to deal with my challenges, and they really helped. Otherwise, I won't be sharing with you, right? So this is one of the things that really helped me out. So that's what I wanted to share. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And you'll see that on my book as well. So we'll talk about that. And another one I will tell you before we kind of end this session. I think, let's see. Yeah, so I have another two key points that I want to tell you. So this one is like essentially start looking out for what your purpose in life is. I know this is something that you might not thought that you need to do, especially when it comes to burnout. But again, I would say this is a little bit of an advanced step, but that can help you. Is that every human being has a purpose in this life. I can tell you that. And the first step is believing you have a purpose. Second step is start searching it, because if you search it, you will find it. I thought there was in my point in my life I had no purpose. I even questioned, why am I even here? But I started like, what, I'm here, might as well start looking for a purpose to be here, right? So I started looking for it, and I realized my purpose is to go through my challenges, find a way to heal them, teach other people that. So I made that my purpose. But what I say is that everybody has a purpose in life, that if you look for it, you will find it. And one of the reasons why people do go through burnout, why people do go through depression, is because they have dismissed that aspect from them, right? So understand there is a purpose, there is something you need to uh, you can be doing in this life. Start putting the steps together. So I give you a quick bonus tip. So there's a technique known as a regret minimization technique. So what it is that think of that you're 100 years old, right? What do you believe you have accomplished by the time you're 100? Right? Do you wish you wrote books? Do you wish you restarted a school? Do you wish you became a better father, mother, whatever may be? You started a business, whatever may be. What do you wish? When you come to the age of 100 or 80 or whatever, however long you believe you will live, what do you wish that you have accomplished? What do you believe that you like, man, I wish I've done that in my life? So advance yourself to 80 or 100 years old and ask yourself, man, I wish I accomplished this. So that might start shedding some light what your purpose in life is, right? So literally I have a chapter on this as well, because I talk about that's one of the techniques I talk about, but also learning from other people's purposes, right? So in my book I give you specific examples of how different people have set up their purpose, and how their purpose actually enable them to achieve greater meaning, greater things in life, and give them purpose. And instead of being hopeless, they got a little bit more purpose. So we will talk. You will see that in that. So if everybody, anyone want to come to that session, that'd be great. So we can. I'll share the book with you when it's coming out. So let's see. Let's go to the next one. And the most important thing I would say is that, as you're going through this journey, listen to your high excitement activities. What Pay attention to things that you bring you joy, bring you excitement, because it is one of the biggest antidotes for burnout, right? So avoidance and lack of joy is a common problem both for anxiety and burnout. So you see that the more you align with things that brings you excitement, bring you joy, it will start making things work for you. So start writing down things down. Maybe it's going to the beach, maybe it's playing basketball like it was for me, maybe it's going to the movies. Do those more. It doesn't need to be about you starting a business or you starting this crazy project. It doesn't need to be that way, because bringing joy into your life is actually one of the biggest antidotes for burnout, and you will start putting and aligning your life in a more happier state. So bring joy to your life, right? The way to do that is start making a list, right? You can ask yourself, what are your most exciting activities or joyful activities you can do, right? Your fun list, right? Start doing more of them, and do them best of your ability, without having a specific expectation. Just do them because you want to do them, not because you have to. Okay. So essentially, let's see if I have any more other slides. No, that's it. So that's essentially the our session for today.